So, we've got capture technology, improving, it's what we do. We've got Texas A&M Cybersecurity Center, Innovation Underground, HTRI, ISSA, T-STAR, Electronic Systems Engineering Technology, and then, of course, the Grand Stafford Building, which is this beautiful building that we're in. So, today, I'm going to start off by introducing Dr. Bart Taylor, so please welcome him up. And then we will have more speakers after that that we will introduce. So, enjoy.
It's all over stuff all over.
All right, everybody. Howdy, y'all.
Howdy.
Yeah, there's a feeling. We love that, don't we, here in Aggieland? My name is Bart Taylor, and I'm the training manager over the cybersecurity program at TEEX. And so, I don't know if y'all were aware of this or not, but October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month and Manufacturing Awareness Month. And so we kind of deal with both at TEEX. And so Jose is a good old friend, and so we're thinking about these things. And I was like, what can we do to bring some cybersecurity aspects into the software developers cartel to just bring to light some of the things that we're dealing with? I think I don't have to really talk about the issues that y'all face in cybersecurity, because we all face these things quite a bit. I don't think I have to do the fear-mongering and explain all the issues with cyber to scare you into understanding why we need cybersecurity. There's a lot of needs that are out there, and TEEX is part of that solution too. I know that y'all here living in College Station probably have heard of TEEX quite a bit, but I feel like sometimes it's an enigma of who we are and what we do. So part of what I'm going to do is explain who we are as TEEX as an organization and an agency, and how we fit into Texas A&M before I introduce our speakers tonight. So hopefully you get an idea of why I'm up here with cyber and why TEEX does cyber in the first place. We do some awesome stuff. But I think when you hear the name TEEX, a lot of the times, that's the right slide. I think a lot of the times you think of those emergency management first. When I've been at Texas A&M, I started to hear back in the 90s, and it was always a conversation of the fire school comes over summer, and you always knew the fire school was coming. But that's part of TEEX. That's part of cool stuff. You always hear when people come visit College Station, Why is College Station on fire all the time? You look at the airport's on fire. Why should I come there? Y'all can't control things. Well, we can actually, and we do it in a professional, wonderful manner. It's called TEEX. We do a lot of research in all these different things. But we are known for our fire school. We are known for our emergency management systems and training. We do it like no other people do in this world. And so TEEX is pretty amazing. But we do have a cyber component that's in there. Because when we talk about the national preparedness of this country and what we do, I don't think I have to tell another crowd that cyber is that important. When we talk about cities and the need for cyber education, we know that there's some places out there that actually do it well. You know, City of Seattle, they have a lot of stuff going on. We just visited them the other day, and I was like, man, y'all got some great cyber stuff and plans in place. But what about when I talk to Cut and Shoot Texas over here in East Texas, you know, do you think they have great cyber plans and things in place? Not necessarily. And so what we do in TEEX and what we do in our cyber programs is make sure we help all areas in America be prepared, all American territories, and we do our diligence in the cyber fight. There's a lot of stuff going on out there. There's a lot of crazy stories and scary stories that can, you know, scare us into needing cyber. But we're here to make sure we talk about cyber in the right way. Talk about cyber in the ways that the communities need. We're here to protect everyone's data. When I go to a restaurant in Cut and Shoot Texas, I want to make sure my money's protected at eating in any restaurant as well. And so our mission as far as TEEX and cyber, as far as what we do in the country, it's important. Everybody needs this education. Everybody needs to be secure. And this country needs it very much. And so with that being said, we do a lot of great stuff at TEEX. It's more than emergency management. It's more than just infrastructure. It's more than just law classes. Cyber is a huge part of it, and we're growing, and we're making a huge impact. We get an opportunity to go across the country in my program. And so places like Cut and Shoot, Texas, Douglas, Wyoming, you know, the little groups, if they need cyber education, they call us at TEEX. And what we do is we send instructors to go teach them at no cost. So if Cut and Shoot, Texas, if little places like Douglas, Wyoming need cyber education, we do it for free. We do it at no cost. We just need their people to show up, and we provide that education, we provide that resource. And so we do a great mission at TEEX by making sure the United States of America is prepared for emergency management services, infrastructure, law, and cybersecurity. So that being said, oh, look at all, I don't follow slides. Sorry, Sam. Good stuff. Part of the Texas A&M system, all that stuff, yes. I will introduce one of my latest hires, Sam Swicegood. Come on now. Sam comes to us from Denver, Colorado, via Cincinnati, Ohio, via Baltimore, Maryland, via Life. When I looked at cybersecurity, I said, okay, there's a need to secure America, right? There's a need for cybersecurity education, but there's also a need to meet the needs of the next generation. There's a need to meet the next set of minds that are coming up there. And how do we engage them, and how do we instruct them, and how do we teach them in a way that they're going to retain that information, keep that information, and utilize that information. And so we're trying to come up with different solutions here at TEEX that will engage our younger audience. And so I introduce our cyber instructor, Mr. Sam Swicegood.
I'm really lucky to be a part of this organization because, for one, I was talking earlier this evening about the community. As coming out here to this community, everyone that I have run into, I've not come across a single person that has not been invested in their community, has wanted to be a part of Bryan College Station I'm very new to Texas, I'm very new to this location, but it's just such a thriving and such a very deeply personal place for many people, and I'm so happy to be here and be a part of this, be a part of TEEX. Everyone I've run into at TEEX, it's a mix of the people that have been there for a million years and the people that have just started, and everyone is really excited about what they do, and I'm stoked to be a part of that. My background is not in cybersecurity specifically. I worked in IT. I worked for a very large IT company years ago, and I worked in a little bit of marketing and a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and my main hobby, which then became part of a career, was game development. I started getting interested in game development really early back when I was making mods for games. I started to realize it was something that I was very good at, and I did it as a hobby. and there was an opportunity to join and work at a studio that was making some games. And then I had an opportunity to start my own studio and make games. And when I started doing that, I started to realize that there was a lot more to games than just putting together a cool looking level and making it feel good. There was a lot of building design that people could use. And then I started to also realize how important games could be in the training space, being able to apply a lot of these concepts. Because when you're looking at a game, you think about, you want your people to have fun. But you don't think about that also in game design, you need your player to know how to do something. You've got to teach them to use the controls, follow the story, do whatever is in the game. You've got to teach them to do that. And you can harness that and turn it into teaching for, like, training for work. So I want to start with what we look at as the problem in training. And this was done by my IAST, which is a research group, and they did things on training. And they talked about training with and without gamification. They gave the same kinds of courses, and these were some of the keywords they looked at. The motivating being at 28%. I've been there. I've been at trainings that were not very motivating. I've been at trainings that weren't very productive. Out of curiosity, who has been at a training that you would say was boring? Yes, absolutely, we all have. And sometimes it's hard to avoid, but you can definitely crunch it down and you can make it more fun, particularly when you're talking about really boring subjects. Yes, you can scare people with cybersecurity, like Dr. Taylor was talking about, but you can also engage people with cybersecurity so that it's something that you're aware of because you had fun engaging with something about it. You can make things much more hands-on. You know, the first time that I ever went and saw one of the courses that on cybersecurity was here, one of the instructors brought something that was very interesting. It says, you know, we test our fire alarms, we test our securities of our doors, we test the things about emergency medical services, so why wouldn't we test and prepare cybersecurity? And it's incredibly important for everyone to be able to test this, constantly be testing it as part of your response plans that you're developing. And so all of these things can be very hands-on. You can put somebody into a situation where they're able to experience something that they're going to see in the real world. What is it going to look like for them? Do they know what a ransomware window looks like? Of course, like, you all probably have an idea of what a ransomware window looks like. But somebody that's in a smaller town that's never seen a ransomware attack, they might not know what that looks like. You might have someone that doesn't know what a phishing email looks like. For a lot of us, it's pretty much firsthand, like immediate, we can tell that like without even a blink. But for some people, they don't really know what to look for, and that's incredibly important to put something in front of them that you can say, these are the things that you can look for in your preparedness plans. More than just that, you can attach examples to them, not just looking at your book and saying, this is a definition of a word or a concept. We're instead going to put you into that concept. We're going to put you in a situation where you are now facing this particular problem that you might face. That's what it's going to look like. This is what you've got to do. And while you're doing that, we're going to define some of these concepts along with it. I'm going to show you some examples of what that looks like as well. And then we have the creativity part of it. We can do some really interesting things that can take common cybersecurity situations and flip them on their head. We can put people in unexpected situations. We can put them into situations that are incredibly memorable. We can take people out of the jobs that they are doing and put them in a job that would be incredibly fantastic for them to do, or incredibly interesting for them to do. Something where they can remember that I learned a concept because I was having so much fun learning about the thing. And I'm going to talk about that too. There's a couple of really great examples, particularly when we're talking about research. The last part of it, and that we're going to touch on, is the strengthened understanding that comes with this. Because it has been shown repeatedly, that people that go through gamified training come out with better understanding of their environment, their goals, and what they personally can do, and how they fit into the cybersecurity scheme, or the training scheme of whatever they're training for, cybersecurity in particular. I mentioned the creativity and putting people into a fantastical situation. So I'm going to put you guys in a bit of a situation here. We're going to pretend that everybody here is working at a fast food joint. And you get told, well, you're going to go through some training to learn how to do some of the cooking that you do in your fast food joint. But we're going to make it interesting because we don't want to have to teach you how to do this 100 times. We're going to make it fun for you and we're going to make it memorable. Here, put on this VR headset. And I know that might sound incredibly weird for you to think of, but this beautiful escape room that you see here is part of a VR game that was created by KFC. And this is what it looks like. In between learning how to do your job of inspecting the chicken, of grabbing the little card that is used to cut the bag open, and what color was that card again? Blue. It was. In between that, it's also got escape room things that involve lasers and like putting like ancient keys into boxes and stoplight things with bouncing lights off of stuff. KFC was able to show that by training somebody with this one, I believe it was an hour-long game, which was made by some of the team that worked on I Expect You to Die, the VR game. If you're familiar with that, the escape room style spy game. They said that this 1 hour of playing in this game was equal to getting training on how to do chicken for about a week. So you could have somebody do this and then pretty much immediately get to work. And it could have just been as simple as having them watch a video instead, but they're laughing, they're having fun, and I guarantee you, they're never going to forget the moment that they did this. I lived in Cincinnati, about 2 hours from Louisville, and I had an opportunity to get out to Louisville, and for a while they had this game on display at the KFC Museum, which I went to because I'm a huge nerd. And I went out there and I got a chance to play a piece of this, and I've never worked at KFC, but I know how to do some of the KFC procedures to this day because I learned how to do it with lasers and Colonel Sanders yelling at me and randomly coughing into my ear. It worked because if you're laughing, you're learning, and that is a very, very consistent thing when it comes to not just game development, but also in training. Instant feedback is really important. Remember how I mentioned before that you could have a concept that's being explained to you and defined at the same time. This is a really good example of this. This is a game that was created by some OSHA vendors in order to teach somebody how to do a walkthrough of safety. And I wish I had a video of it, unfortunately I don't, but the idea would be that you would walk through and all the things that are around you, you can look at it and you can decide whether or not it's a hazard or not. And there are a lot of hazards. And it'll tell you the ones that you missed. Right then and there, it'll pop up on the screen and tell you which ones you missed. And there will be people moving around you, because if you've ever worked anywhere where OSHA comes and does inspections, like big factories, those factories don't stop for an inspection. So being able to notice when something's wrong might be something that you miss that happened for 5 seconds while someone was doing something that they do only a couple of times in a day. So being able to train on this kind of awareness is incredibly important. Can somebody be able to notice when somebody picked up that box wrong? Maybe they pick up that box correctly 10 times and then they get it wrong once. Can you notice when that is? And by doing it this way, being able to replay it and have the game explain for you piece after piece builds that recollection. I'm assuming a bunch of software people, you've probably played some games. You probably play a lot of games, more than likely, if you're like me. Maybe I'm just the nerd, but have you ever played a video game that highlighted objects as you walk through it? Have you ever played a video game where you can look at something and it tells you what it is, pops up over top of it? It's the exact same concept. Using the exact same systems, and it suddenly becomes a training tool. The intuitive user interfaces is incredibly important here as well. In game development, one of the hardest things a game developer has to deal with is getting a player to do what they want. The hardest one, I'll tell you, is to get players to look up. Because when you get players to look up, they'll pay attention to what's up there. Where did the chicken come from in the KFC? From up above. Because things that are above you become more recalled. It's just one of those weird psychological things. But the point here really is just getting players to do what you want, knowing how the controls work. That's why most games have a tutorial level that teach you how to do the simple things, the moving, the swinging your weapon, the interacting with objects. All these things have to be very intuitive, and in training, even more so, because you want to make sure the player knows what they're doing so that they can move on to the training part and start doing what they're doing. It should be as simple as grabbing a card, cutting a bag of chicken open. It should be very simple for the player to do. You also get the benefit of instructor tools, which I'm really excited about because as part of what I'm doing with TEEX, I'm helping to design some of these gamified things. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. These tools can be real-time. An instructor could sit and watch someone going through a process much like this and be able to grade it on the fly. If you're in VR, you could have an instructor that is giving somebody an example of how to do something. You could have a pre-recorded instructor session where someone explains in real time how to do something, or have someone they might be on the other side of the world. These are all tools that exist in the game world that can be applied to training very, very easily, and I've worked with different tools that have applied these same concepts. Something like multiplayer, of having people in the same room being able to interact, seems pretty simple and trivial for most people who play games, but it's a really complicated part of game development, because you've got to make sure that everyone is seeing the same things consistently and interact with things consistently. And when it works properly, that game design element allows people to collaborate in ways they've never been able to before. Gamification really needs to be fun though, and you can really use incredibly creative ways to get data. I want to talk for just a second about the Oxford Protein Informatics Group. Is anyone here familiar with the Oxford Protein Informatics Group? Yes, at least one person. That's better than I thought it was going to be. The Oxford Protein Informatics Group works with trying to figure out how cell proteins fold, which is incredibly important in gene therapy. How do they do that? What does it mean, protein folding? I do not know. However, what I do know is that the Oxford Protein Informatics Group does this work, and that it is incredibly important for gene therapy. The problem is that when you have your computer spit out all of its data, protein folding is strangely aesthetic. You have to match some patterns. And computers, they're getting better at it, but they're not the best at matching patterns or understanding aesthetics. Because of this ends up being very expensive. If you want to have a computer that is doing some kind of aesthetics, they have to be able to run graphics cards, and even with development of LLMs that are able to do that kind of thing, it's really not as good as a human. It's time consuming. Doing this takes a while. It takes a lot of people, because a human is going to be able to look at a screen that has a bunch of data and line it up. You have things broken down, and you really are just kind of trying to make little hills and valleys. It's kind of like Tetris, which is why they started off by making this. Anyone here ever play Philo when it came out? It was really big on addictinggames.com, if you're familiar with that old one. I haven't just dated myself, hopefully. Philo gave you data that came directly from OPIG and asked you to then match it up by color and make it essentially look kind of aesthetically pleasing. It had different ways that it was able to turn these patterns into patterns that had then essentially gone through a set of supervision. You give this same pattern to 100 people, have them all kind of find the aesthetics in it, and then you find the averages of those, and what you end up with is an answer that is then actually very good data to use. Now, this was very helpful. It worked for a little while, and then pandemic hit, and they were looking for different other ways to do this. And right as pandemic hit, a particular game was getting very popular. Out of curiosity, has anyone here ever played the Borderlands series? No? Oh, yeah, one person. There we go. Oh, got a couple over there. The Borderlands series is a very big first-person shooter game that is pretty silly on its own. It's got a pretty silly aesthetic. And in Borderlands 3, you can come across in your hub Borderlands Science, which is an arcade cabinet that lets you play a Tetris-like game, narrated by Mayim Bialik from The Big Bang Theory, who tells you what a great job you're doing while you're matching up colored blocks. And she explains to you while you're playing it that what you're doing is you are helping people at OPIG learn how to fold proteins. This produced so many results, so much data for OPIG that it put them ahead far beyond what they thought they would ever be able to do, because they had massively crowdsourced the simple matching of colors by making it really fun to do so. Because guess what? The more you play this, the more gold you get in the game and the bigger guns you can get. They actually had, what Philo had given them, they said that Philo had 5% of the data in the entire lifetime of that game as they got from this in 1 year. So let's go back to our problem. Motivating, unmotivating, unproductive, and boring. I showed you this is the non-gamified version. So what happens when we gamify that? They presented the same kind of course materials to different groups, they gamified it, and this was the response. The motivating went up to 83. Unproductive went down to 3%. Boring went down to 10%. Can you just imagine for a second, a training program that only 10% of people find boring? Also, who are those 10% of people? Because I don't want to know them. And are people learning is the other question. I mean, it's great if people find it motivating and they don't find it boring, but are they actually learning? Yes, they are. What we find is that people that go through gamified versions complete tasks 58% faster. This is from the same statistics. They have improved understanding of 75% for gamified versions, and their recall is improved 40%. This, for private companies, saves them a lot of money. And everybody cares about money, private or public sector. Money is incredibly important when it comes to training because there is certainly a cost involved in it. Being able to cut that down and increase recall is huge, and that's why we do gamification at TEEX. This is a picture of our cyber range that's up here. I've spent most of my day up here today because we've been working on some stuff over in the cyber range. We can simulate cyber attacks here. So one of the things we've been doing today is one of the courses that we offer simulates cyber attacks. And we have people that come out here to College Station. They get assigned roles. They deal with a cyber incident in front of computers that are actually simulating what it would look like. They don't have to wonder, man, I wonder what it would look like to get a ransomware attack while I'm working at a computer that handles the control of the local hospital systems. We get to show them and then make them respond to it. It's incredibly immersive. Some of the feedback we got from this was stuff like, I'm never going to forget this. Because we put them right in the middle of it. We make it an experience that they get to be a part of. We get to inject new problems to them in real time. That's one of the things I was working on today. Anyone here use Discord? A whole bunch of people here use Discord. Slack. Right? One of the things that we can do is that we use tools much like that to be able to simulate this environment. If someone did an incident, they're not going to be using some proprietary tool to be able to do something. They're probably going to set up something in their Slack. They might be setting something up in email. And we can then simulate all of those here. We run those same kinds of programs. We make it look and feel exactly like they would experience. We can create custom scenarios. We don't have to worry about whether or not this is going to really apply to them or look like them. We can actually ask them ahead of time, be like, what does your system look like? Because we want to make our version of your simulation look like what you're going to see. And in gamification, that becomes a lot easier than when you have incredibly big pre-planned kind of package things that go out. We can make it in real time. We can ask them for their logos, we can ask them for their screens, and make it so that they know exactly what they're looking at. I'm going to show you a little bit about what I've been working on over at TEEX. And part of it is our red versus blue exercises. Up here at the top, we've got a hacker dashboard. Down here at the bottom, we've got some SCADA systems. This one here particularly is in charge of some traffic lights down here. And what we do, and in this particular exercise, is that we split the group into a red team and a blue team. And that red team, they go through and they play this little hacker game simulation. They figure out, here's some vectors for you to look at. Do you want to hit them with an email phishing campaign? How about an email spear phishing campaign? You've got a limited budget. All right, let's see. You want to drop a USB drive that's full of some terrible code? Oh, we could do that. How about we maybe you have a compromised credential that costs some money. Maybe you have a by attacks like that. And so we could have the player walk out. We're going to have you stand in front of this machine, in your hand, physically, you've got an instruction manual on how that machine works. And the question for you is, do you know how to fix it? Can you fix it from here? And all the while, your teammates may be back at HQ trying to deal with a ransomware attack. It becomes very immersive. You gotta talk to them and be like, hey, I'm here. You've got complications like, maybe this documentation seems to be missing a page. How often have you found documentation that was missing a big, important chunk? All the time. I worked in IT. At a certain point, you just kind of stop looking at documentation because you know it's not going to be there for what you're looking for. The other part of this, again, is the hacker side, because you might be, instead of the person trying to fix it, you might be the hacker that's going out there and you've got a picture of a schematic that you downloaded off the internet, and you want to find out how you're going to cause the most problems for them. All these are mini games. I mentioned the hacker side because when you get to play that hacker, you remember what you did. You remember how it felt. You remember what your targets were. How was I trying to be a jerk? Because that's something that you then remember. That's something that someone might target. That's how their brain may perceive this particular situation, how they're going to try and push that back to you. The choose your own adventure aspect is one that I really like a whole lot, because it's one where you can go back and see what might have happened if you did something a little bit differently. There's not an opportunity to do over in the real world. And when I talk to people that are doing courses, a lot of the time there are people there that have experienced one cyber attack or another. And sometimes there's a question of, I wonder what I could have done differently. While we can't necessarily make it perfect, we can definitely say, what would have happened differently in this case? And you might be able to find some inspiration for when it happens next time, you'll remember, I did something like that, and I think that that worked. Planning exercises are incredibly important when it comes to this kind of stuff. You plan for what you're working on, you're putting together your response, your recovery plans. All of these plans are a part of everybody's daily life, your jobs. When you're developing plans like this, you need to know what you have gone up against, what's going to be out there in the world for you, but what you're going to be facing as well. So when you're building these planning exercises, you can now base these on experiences that you've had, because these experiences in these games are based on experiences people have had in the real world as well. The goal of our gamification at TEEX is to make it really fun, make it really interesting, make it incredibly memorable. We want to make it as immersive as we can, make it as realistic as we can, and make it really, really fun. I keep talking about fun because that's what gaming is. And when you're laughing, you're learning. That's why I'm here. That's why TEEX is here. I'm really, really excited to be part of this. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Sam. Another round of applause for Sam. Mary Kate, come on in. I hope you realize why I was so excited to hire this guy. Like, he's super talented. So that's Mary Kate comes on stage. Jose's going to steal a laptop. But no, there's exciting stuff at TEEX. You know, to get an opportunity to innovate and develop and do these things, it's pretty fantastic. So to take these concepts and put it in an environment that we can utilize to help educate the world and educate people, I'm very excited about it. But now we're going to introduce our next speaker. Mrs. Mary Kate Howard comes to us from HP, but also comes to us, this one is personal to me, because Mary Kate comes to y'all via my program that I taught for many, many years in College Station. For about 20 years, I taught IT and cyber at A&M Consolidated High School, getting kids A+, Network Plus, Security Plus certified for many, many moons. And so I had the privilege and the honor of my entire life to teach this young lady here. And so now I introduce you to Mary Kate Howard from HP, who is now going to teach me some things, and I am truly humbled for this experience. So Mary Kate, to you.
Howdy, everybody. I'm sure you figured out that if I went to high school here, I also went to college here. So a little bit about me, and I will keep this very short, because I have been in IT for 15 plus years thanks to Bart's programs. Went into IT working at the help desk at A&M, graduated with a degree in HP in IT, went and immediately graduated and worked for HP, where I've been for the last 11 years. Nobody's surprised that I did IT for 10 years. Then about a year ago, I was approached asking, hey, you know where all the bodies are buried at HP. I've put a couple there myself. We really need somebody that's technical, that can actually also talk cybersecurity to people that might not necessarily understand it. And so that's when I made the move over to cybersecurity, and I love it. I've been having a lot of fun. The TLDR of this, though, is that I am not a developer. I'm not a programmer. You don't see that anywhere on here. But in my career, one of the things that I have appreciated and one of the things that I wanted to stress when I started looking to start my career was, hey, I want to be able to be that person that can talk to non-technical people, maybe not necessarily people that are invested in IT, and make sense of it for them, make it relevant. And a lot of that has carried on into my role in cybersecurity, because now I have to talk to people about, hey, this is what you need to be doing to make yourself more resilient. And so that's part of what I want to share with you guys today. So before we get started, a few definitions. I will say I'm going to be asking that these slides be sent out because there's a lot of detail, and I'm not going to go into any of it. But it's going to be stuff that if a lot of you are curious and you're self-starters, I'll provide you details for that. The definitions that I'm providing here are from NIST, which is the first definition, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. 9 times out of 10, if you're talking about anything in cybersecurity, it has come from NIST. And so some of the key concepts, and one of the reasons I appreciated moving from IT into cybersecurity, is the concept of defense in depth, because quite a bit of your actual defense is not one thing you're doing, it's multiple things. It's how you are layering all of the different defenses that you have to make sure that you are secure. Because just as you can be a secure top to bottom because of everything, one of those things failing can also make you break. What we're really going to be talking about today, though, especially as it's relevant to programming and to developers, is common vulnerabilities and exposures, or CVEs. There is a maintained database by MITRE where they list, hey, these are all the vulnerabilities that we know to date. It's key, to date, that we know. It is formatted based on the year that the vulnerability was found and then the number that they assign it. You can find CVEs based on very specific applications, based on operating systems, all sorts of good things. And then CVSS, or Common Vulnerability Scoring System, is how those get scored. 0 to 10, 0 being, it's a vulnerability, but it's not that easily or commonly exploited, or 10 being critical and saying, hey, this is easily exploitable, and it'll cause serious damage if it happens. Some more definitions or key factors on how that CVSS score, though, gets calculated, is how that attack can happen. Does it require somebody to physically be at a machine, whether that's a laptop or a server? If that's the case, if it's going to physically require somebody to have a badge and get in and get there, not so likely that's going to happen. Whereas if it can move and it traverses the network because somebody clicked on a bad link on their email, that's really bad. That's too easy. And so that's how quite a few of these different scores get calculated. It's almost like golf, like the lower complexity of it, like the lower number, is actually bad. Because if it's very easy to do, then that's bad. We have to have a higher number. The ones that I find more important, though, especially just thematically for cybersecurity, are the last 3 up here. Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. This is what is commonly called the CIA triad in cybersecurity. But that is, hey, is your data actually still safe? Is it sensitive data that people have accessed? If so, that's high. Is it still the same data you expect it to be? If it was manipulated, if a bad actor has actually gone out there and changed something, we can't trust that data anymore. And then availability, is the data still there, or is the service still there? I like to joke about, the CrowdStrike outage that took down the world in July. It wasn't a cyber attack, but how many things went down? How many things were not available? That was part of the CIA triad that failed for so many companies. Now, one of the things that I learned in Bart's class, and I continue to talk about even in my career, is the OSI model. This is an eye chart. And so I don't expect you all to be able to see this, but it starts honestly from the bottom up. This is how your environment is structured. Every environment is structured. From how it is physically connected with cables to how that application ultimately gets presented. So there are some fun ways that every level of this can be exploited. It can be attacked. We already talked about, does somebody physically need to have access to a machine and plug in a flash drive or something to cause problems? Or even, some of the more common ones that, as developers you might have to keep in mind. SQL injection, cross-site scripting, things that people can do that just take advantage of people being people and probably pushing something out carelessly, maybe just not even knowing that it's something you need to worry about. But that's higher up on the chain. But what I wanted to talk about, as I said, is CVEs. And what I like thinking about is that, that concept of defense in depth. While I'm not a programmer and I'm not here to talk specifically about programs, anything you develop, everything you host, it's on something. Somebody probably manages that. There's usually going to be the aspect of it that, well, that's the server, that's the operating system. I don't touch that, that's not my thing. How many people that I've worked with in my career, even in help desk, would say, well, I'm a programmer, I don't know how IT works. I don't know what my ports and protocols are. That's still important in context. It's one of the reasons that I like to say, hey, I don't need everybody to be an expert in cybersecurity. It doesn't have to be at the forefront of your mind, but it has to be somewhere in there. Something that you at least are aware of, that everything you are doing, even with the best intentions, has the possibility of being compromised. And so these are critical vulnerabilities, CVEs, that happened this year. You can see that the format of them all say CVE 2024. Starting again from the bottom up, are at different levels of the OSI model. They were all identified this year on things that have been out there for a very long time. When we talk about IT and IT systems, a long time can still be 3 to 5 years. But that's why I say that the MITRE database for CVEs only knows what's been found to date. And so you as developers can be developing with all the best intentions. You can be doing everything as secure as possible to date. So that's one of the reasons to say, don't stress yourself out about trying to be up to date on this, but keep it in mind. Make sure that you're aware that, anything I did yesterday could easily be exploited. The thing that all three, well, a lot in the middle, but they have very similar common impacts, that they all had in common, other than the fact that they were 10 or near 10 CVSS scores, was that they enabled remote code execution. The first one at the bottom being on a firewall operating system, where, if somebody was able to get into the firewall, which they could, a lot of the times when these exploits are found, it's because it's actually been used. Somebody got into a firewall, leveraged this exploit, and what can you do at that point? They have root access to the firewall. They can put whatever firewall rule they want. They could immediately start remoting into your environment and take everything, or turn everything off, hide it from the rest of the world. In the middle, one of the most recent ones, I think within the last week or two, impacts a very common print spooler for Linux operating systems. Like all Linux operating systems. What I've linked here is specifically for Red Hat, but Cups is a print service. It's very widely used. Even if you don't have printers, so server operating systems are a great example, which is why I put Red Hat on here. How many servers are ever actually going to be doing a print job? Probably not near zero, but not 100, not 100%. But it's a default service. It's there. So now every Linux server, give or take a couple years, have this vulnerability, and it's high. And so somebody could leverage that, remote code execute, pull everything off of there, you're done. And then also recently with PHP, this is something that, you know, it's especially with the versions, I've been out there for a while, it takes advantage of the fact that somebody, it's their job, it's their hobby to try to break shit. They wanted to see, hey, if I try to do this, can I take advantage of things that, tools that are made to help make my life easier? Can I make it do something unintentional? And the answer is yes. You know, I used to do UAT testing. I'm sure everybody, if you're a developer, has to deal with UAT testers. And you can never anticipate the scenarios that a UAT tester gets themselves into, because sometimes it's mind-boggling. That's kind of how some of these things get found, is it's just by accident, or it's also by somebody intentionally trying to break it. So what can you do? I already said I don't want you to be scared, as Bart said earlier. But keep it in mind. As I said, there's only so much you can do. And if you're in an organization, there are usually support practices in place. But if it is something that you want to look more into, OWASP, which is another fantastic and security organization, highly recognized in the world and the industry, has reference guides, and I've provided links directly to them for developers. Best practices that you can do as far as securing your data, little things that you can do along the way to say, hey, oh, SQL injection, cross-site scripting, what can I do from the get-go to make sure that that doesn't accidentally make its way into production? But then when we talk about moving code to production, we talk about actually trying to make this usable. Penetration testing. It used to be something we'd say, oh, I'm only going to worry about that if this is public-facing. Well, we already talked about defense in depth. Anybody can do something that makes that defense of it being internal disappear. So it's still good to have this idea of penetration testing, even if it's just the concept of looking for your vulnerabilities, just like any bad actor would be doing, to say, hey, what are the things that I could take care of now before we push it to production? Some of the industry tools that are actually out there, there's Nessus scans by Tenable, there's Qualys. Those are things that organizations are typically paying for. But Nessus and Tenable specifically came originally from one that I've linked here called OpenBoss. And there is a 3-tier version of where it's been bundled in called Greenbone, where you can actually download that and use it for free and do kind of that first level sniff of, hey, can something flush out what I'm doing here? And more specifically, find existing vulnerabilities based on that MITRE database and say, hey, I see that you're doing this. Really recommend you update that. The good thing about MITRE managing this CVE database is that they also link remediations. One of the great things, especially as cybersecurity as a whole is growing as an industry, is this need for everybody to collaborate. And so there are so many resources out there where other people have done this. I'm a huge proponent of copying homework. You know, don't reinvent the wheel. If somebody's already done this before, take advantage of it. And so even if it's just taking that initial step of, hey, I'm going to take the initiative, check my stuff, see what vulnerabilities are out there, and try to close that before it becomes a problem. Like I said, it doesn't have to be at the very front of your mind, but if it's something that you're thinking of, that one step could save you from pushing something to production that could potentially be catastrophic. But with that, that's everything I had to present. I think our next step is a panel.
Can I add something to that? I have a good friend that works at MITRE. There are like 3 people that work full-time working all the CVEs every day.
Wow. Kudos to
There
them.
are hundreds of CVEs behind. If you have the time, please donate it to them.
That's fantastic. Thank you.